Hey y'all, happy Thursday. It is chilly here in Houston and I don't like it. I can't wait for you guys to meet my guest. She's been on here, I think this is her fifth time.
Hello.
Hello. Oh. Welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara and I have with me fantasy author and vampire novelist Linda Ling. Welcome, Linda.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfect.
All right.
Crystal clear for being literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah, and we can continue our conversation from a few months ago when we got cut off.
I know. I think for some reason, I don't know why I did that, but now it's allowing me to go a little bit longer, or it's allowing me to end them, so we won't have that this time.
Okay. All right. That's good.
But I was saying, I think I've had you on here 5 times. Can you believe that?
Is this the 5th time already? Oh my goodness.
Well, I was thinking this is my 3rd season, so it's my 3rd year. I can't believe it's been over 75 interviews.
Wow. Well done. And if I remember right, you lost your account, right? And then you had to rebuild and all that. How's that going?
It is kind of rough. Like, we all get emotionally attached to our social media, and I am no different. And so losing all my work and post and connections and having to find people again, I was so sad. Like, I think it took me a couple of days just to process what happened, but now I'm back and better and I love it. But I have all of our interviews on my website and on YouTube. So
Yay.
I know, never lose your content.
Always good to have backups. I think I need to take that advice too. I'm so lazy. I have no time.
Well, no one wants to be like, let me digitally back up all my stuff. Okay, so how are you? How is Singapore?
It's hot. So not too long ago, we just had Chinese New Year, and that was fun, tiring, but fun. And I'm glad it's over and it's not going to come around for another year.
Okay, it's the year of the snake. That's what I know.
Yeah.
But how do you celebrate it?
So I think every East Asian country that does celebrate Chinese New Year does it a little bit differently with different traditions, but generally you have the reunion dinner on the eve of Chinese New Year. So that one is arguably more important than the New Year itself, because that's when, historically, traditionally, people come home from wherever they are and reunite with their families for that one meal the night before the New Year. And then the New Year itself, and then some people will stay up to welcome the New Year. I don't, I can't, I need my beauty sleep. And then on the New Year, again, depending on the tradition, depending on who you're living with, either people come visit you or visit the elder that you're staying with, or you go visit elders. And that kind of goes on for the next 15 days.
Oh my gosh, I did not realize the celebration was that long.
Yeah, I mean, people go back to work, they go back to school, right? But you have the option of continuing to visit or celebrate or like have meals together for the next 15 days. And then, exchanging rib packets and all that kind of thing. And then once those 15 days are over, then that's it. No more. And I'm glad it's over.
I think that is just such a beautiful tradition, though. I had a friend who is, she's from China and she observes it, obviously. And so just being around her, I was part of her wedding and it was all in Chinese. And we wore like the traditional costumes. It was just really fascinating. Such a beautiful culture. But with the red envelopes, and there's that for the wedding too. I noticed that.
Yeah, so you give at weddings, you give red envelopes for the wedding couple to bless them and get them started on life. At Chinese New Year, uh, this is where it gets really complicated, right? If you're not married, so you could be a kid, you could be a single adult,
Okay.
you get the red packet every year
Ooh.
until you get married. And then when you get married, you have to give other single people. Yeah. And this is where the rules kind of get murky. So uh, parents can still give their adult married children red packets because they're your parents. Um, if someone my age is married, you have the option of giving the red packet to a single person in the same generation as you, but you don't have to. But if it's the next generation, you have to. Yeah, this is where it gets really complicated, and then we have to keep track like who's where and what.
I need a Venn diagram of who gets the red packages.
No, and how do you address them? So I'm not sure if you know that in Chinese culture, you have a very specific way of addressing every single person related to you. Like,
Okay, I did not know that. I know in the Arab culture, my best friend is Arab. And so, yes, he tells me there's very specific, and it's like terms of endearment, but also levels of respect. Is it the same?
pretty much, yeah. And I mean, nowadays people are not so fussy, but if you have, if you're part of a more fussy family, more strict, then your mom's sister is addressed in a different way to your dad's sister.
Oh, maternal and paternal.
Yeah.
Inspired prose, she's commented, there
It
needs to
needs
be
to
a
be
book, like a book of
so,
instruction.
so over Chinese New Year, usually my feed ends up being like Chinese Americans or just Asians my age or younger, all saying the same thing about the red packets, about, about the different ways of addressing people, and then there's also the lion dances and the dragon dances. So that one's a really beautiful part of the celebration.
I've only seen them. I'm in Houston, and there is a huge Asian culture here, and there's a traditional Chinatown district is what it's called. But they do celebrate with the dragons. But they also in like April they have the dragon boat races
Oh,
along the main bayous of Houston.
is that in
It's
April? I
so
thought it was a bit later. Okay.
Yeah, it's always in the spring. It's never in February because I think because we just have horrible weather. It's either going to be blazing hot or today it's like it was 25 degrees.
Oh,
So they've had to move it down the calendar a little bit, but that's when they have the festival, they have the dragon boat races, and it's in downtown Houston. It's really neat. I've taken the kids several times.
okay, okay. I have a feeling Houston might do it in April because the Dragon Boat races are associated with a different festival, and
Mhm.
that's usually held in the second half of the year, if memory serves me right. But I guess weather dependent, that's why they decide April is better. But I've seen footage of dragon and lion dancers from Houston. I've seen it. I've seen it this year. But I don't know who's
It's
real it was.
huge Asian population here, which is really neat because like Houston's a very international city. But I think the reason why they don't have it any later, June and July, I mean, it's 100 degrees out with 100% humidity. You will melt.
It's too hot.
Exactly.
Yeah. The nice thing, I think this is a nice segue to mention that the nice thing is it's a reminder that I have my vampire novella that is gonna have these Chinese New Year traditions. Some of them I couldn't capture everything, but I could capture some of it. I'm so pleased about that.
Okay, that is a great segue into the Origin Chronicles.
Chronicles, yeah.
Okay, so you have two books. Tell us about the name of both of them.
Okay, so the Origin Chronicles is my vampire series. I have no idea. They are not paranormal in that there's nothing spooky. They're not paranormal romance because it's not a romance themed with a happily ever after by the end of each book, but it's a series. It's probably best classed as fantasy or urban fantasy featuring vampires and only vampires. And the first book is called A Mid-Flight Vampire's Tale. It's called Mid-Flight because the conversation that about the story about the characters is taking place on the plane. And then the second book is the follow-up where, where the two vampires who are talking on the plane get off the plane, and then something has to happen, and it's called a chimeric vampire's tale. The word chimeric comes from three different meanings that I got for the word chimera. So a chimera is a hybrid creature. It also means something impossible. And then the third thing is in science, a chimera is actually a mix of genetic components in one cell. So, and I feel that the three meanings of that same word are captured in my book. And that's why it's called chimeric.
That is so neat. Do you have, I should have told you, but do you have the covers?
Yeah, I do.
Because they're beautiful.
So this is book one's cover. You see a
They're,
little plane here, right? And then it's got sciencey elements because I can't help myself. That's the test tube, right? And then book two is this one. There we go. And
that,
again, sciencey elements. That's the DNA helix.
they're so pretty side by side. I know, I love them. I saw them on your post. You had them side by side, or I think stacked on top of each other. It's so pretty.
No, and because I actually have a collection of Chinese fans that go with them.
Really?
I do. I have my Chinese fans here. So,
Oh, let's see those. Wow.
and yeah, they just go really nice together.
They're
Because
so beautiful.
because I have Mandarin titles on my books, and I intend to have Mandarin titles on all my vampire books because and the reason is because I'm a POC author. I try to put in Chinese history and Chinese culture into my books, including POC characters. So that's super meaningful for me.
Oh, I think it's not represented enough.
Oh, I think it's represented enough in like Chinese TV shows and dramas, but not in English. So
Oh,
my
no, not here in the States. Not by any means.
right.
I wish there was more.
My struggle all my life was that even though I'm of Chinese ethnicity, I live in a country that pretty much tries to straddle both worlds, and I think a lot of people my age struggle with that. We know our origins, we know our roots, and we know we ought to speak Mandarin or at least be a little bit more in tune with the culture where we came from. But many of us, we speak in English, we write in English, we express ourselves in English, and when I was a kid, we were very, very Western influenced. I grew up watching things like Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, and then when I was a little bit older, it became Buffy and what was the other one?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Charmed,
Angel
um,
was the spinoff.
Angel, which I never really watched. And then there was Friends, right? So when you have this is what I saw on TV, but then at the same time, you have Chinese New Year, right?
Hmm.
Your culture, your origin. So I've struggled with that a lot all my life. And it's only now that I realize that, okay, this doesn't have to be a struggle. It's more like a just straddle and it's fine.
Well, do you think it's because your parents are kind of the old world? You're raising the new world, and you're kind of in between. You know, a lot of first generation Americans are similar to you, where they straddle the traditions that their families have in their mother country or their home country, but then they'll raise their kids on iPads and the NFL and all this Western. And so I feel like these first generation Americans here are very similar to you, because I have several friends that are Hispanic or Arabic, Latin, and so they talk about that all the time too. And they are, a lot of times they were raised with the grandma and grandpa in the house so they can read, write, and spell in their native language, but their children can't.
Yeah. Um, it's similar, but not quite. I would say, like, because I'm in Singapore, I would say the whole country is like that. Because as a Chinese person in Singapore, I'm actually in the majority. The natives are in the minority. So the majority of us, even though we're third or fourth generation, we still straddle this. Who am I really? And
Wow.
it gets even more complicated when you think about it because the people from China who moved to Singapore, they came from different parts. So if you want to be really specific, you can even break it down to different dialect groups, which have very specific nuances in microculture and the food that they like, and then the way they pay respects and all that kind of thing. So it gets even more complicated. So I get what you're saying about the first generation, but then the thing is, I'm not even first generation. If you count it, I'm third generation. And why would I still be feeling that way? But I think it's because I'm in the majority ethnicity group and we're still struggling. The country is still kind of like, we're trying to figure out who we are.
That is fascinating because you're right. You would think by three generations in, it would be resolved.
No, I don't think it is. And I think that's I don't think it's sad. I think that's the beauty of it, that we're still trying to figure out who we are. And as propaganda-ish as it sounds, the government is trying to push to make sure people actually know who they are too. And that's actually an important messaging that they have every year when it comes to our the equivalent of Independence Day, our National Day.
So, how does that manifest? How does the government try to continue to keep that messaging alive? That's kind of an interesting statement.
Um, so I think, from the time we're kids, and then even my kids now, they try to you're taught the country's history and what led to where we are now. But you're also taught that, okay, there are several ethnic groups and everyone just has to live together. And here are examples of when we don't live together or when the world chooses not to live together and how bad things can be. So let's try not to let that happen. That kind of thing.
I think but that's how it should be, right? Because I know that we here in the States, we do have American history, and then we also have our state history. So seventh grade is always Texas history, and then eighth grade is American history. And usually a lot of the schools will travel to the national, Washington, D.C., the national capital to learn more about it. But I love that they're trying to be message of respect and diversity is important because the world is just so angry and divisive already. Whew. We kind of
Yeah.
forget
So
we're all humans first.
when I read about stuff happening in America, I get sad for America, and I actually start feeling grateful for where I am. When I was younger, it was odd. It was the other way around. I was like, I don't like this place. I want to be somewhere else. But I don't know. I think I'm older and wiser, and I'm like, nah, things are pretty okay here.
I know. No, this year has just been wild with everything that's happened over here. And I know that everybody has eyes on America. And it's just like
Right.
the running joke amongst me and like my circle of influence. I keep saying like, this was like the 135th day of January, or this is like already the 13th month of 2025, because it seems like every day you wake up and it's just like breaking news. This just in, da-da, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, can we just settle? Can we just have some settlement, not be trials and tribulations as a country? But I don't know. It's more like hold on to your hairdo because who knows what's next.
Well, from my heart to yours, I wish you all the best.
Thank you. I try not to get too, I'm not, I don't get political with anybody. We all have our beliefs. And that's what's great about this country is that is written into our Constitution. However, things just get so crazy and divisive. And I remember a time I was talking to my sister about this. We have two political parties. Well, three, sorry. And I said, do you remember when everyone just got along? Like you just worked out deals and like, hey, if you do this, I'll do that. And it was just so respectful. And I said, now I don't even know. And she's like, I know, where did that all go? Because it hadn't been like that for a long time.
That was how it worked.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We're so far removed from that.
did you catch me? I was asking if that was how it worked, where everyone got along and made deals, whereas now it's just like throwing stones at each other.
I think it's very much like that. They used to say middle of the aisle. You could have bipartisan politics, but we'd meet middle of the aisle. And I'm like, I don't even think there is an aisle. I think it's like the Grand Canyon. You can't see that person anymore. It's so wide. And I just feel like our parties keep running to the extremes. And I'm like, is there anybody who's in the middle of the aisle anymore? So
Actually, it reminds me of a funny story I once heard about the parliament in UK. Apparently, the distance that different parties have from each other historically is a sword's length. So you can't kill each other.
I happen to watch the BBC because, sometimes when you can't get, depending on the news stations here, you get either very right or very left. And sometimes I go out to the BBC and I'm like, okay, what happened? Just to get to the base of the truth. And I was just surprised how their parliament, they do talk over each other and they yell at each other. And I was like, whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah, and then I think at the end of it, they're all okay. So things here, parliament here tends to be pretty tame, almost lame. But in the other country that does something similar to the UK is Taiwan. They're usually yelling at each other a lot in Mandarin, and it's very funny to watch.
I just wasn't used to that. I thought, and we've had a lot of congressional hearings, obviously, because of what's going on over here, and people talk over each other. And I was raised where that is the rudest thing you can do. Like, you just don't do it. And no one wants to yield the floor anymore. And my mom was the captain of her debate team. And then I did a little bit of debate. And that is one of the, like, rule 101. You yield the floor. And that doesn't happen anymore. I'm just like, okay, I guess ours is morphing more into like the UK and the Taiwanese, which I'm not used to. It's to me, it's still wild.
It'll be funny. Trust me.
Well, my sister is an attorney. And so when she has these galas or different events that come up and, her firm gets a table, a lot of times I'll attend because I'm fascinated to learn, what's going on in Texas, right? Law in Texas. But so many of those lawyers, they will have speakers or they'll have guest speakers. And all these attorneys are still chit-chatting at their tables. I'm like, oh, you guys are so rude. Like, there was a guest speaker presenting during the luncheon or the gala or the, and all that. And they're all talking. She's like, yeah, that's how it always is. You can't keep attorneys quiet. And I'm like, so I wonder, because Congress is made up of a lot of attorneys. So I wonder if that's it too.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know. I was like, y'all's mamas didn't raise y'all right, okay? Because we don't talk when there's a guest speaker speaking.
We need more people like you around.
I don't know. I'm old school, but anywho. So back to your books. I love those fans. Did you make them yourself, or did you order them to come with the book?
My mom bought them. People gave them to me. I found them. I mean, I'm in Asia. You find these things all over the place.
They're so beautiful, though.
So that's been the wonderful thing about writing this series, which is that I kind of allowed myself to get in touch with the history and the culture and the roots. And the other thing that that explains why this is happening now to me, and not just to me, but to a lot of other people of Chinese origins, is for a long time, the Cultural Revolution prevented people of Chinese origins from actually getting in touch with their roots. People had to wear certain clothes, conform to certain ways of doing things. And China and Chinese people, they were not really allowed to go into costume, go into history, and there was a certain thing that the communists wanted people to say and do and present to the world.
Of course.
China has only in the past 20 years, I make it sound so recent, right? But actually it's 20 years. China has in the past 20 years been able to really open itself up technologically, culturally, and I think why it's impacting me now is I get to see this blossoming when what I grew up with was something totally different. And being able to see, fellow Chinese people very proudly wearing their costumes, traditional clothing, and talk about things like fans and hair pieces and poetry, history. that makes me feel like I need to do my part to share. And I'm only realizing that nowadays that this is what is driving it too. Because when I started writing this series, I wasn't really sure why I was doing it. But then, yeah, now I think about it, there is this element happening too.
Well, and isn't that beautiful? Because I guess we take that for granted, right? We've had freedom of speech over here since, the country was founded, but yet China has not. And it is a very old country. Beautiful, but again, highly controlled, highly, yeah, the people. So I feel like, is it the government and the change of leadership that's getting more progressive? Or is it the people demanding? So there's more like Western influence coming in and demanding more transparency, the people?
No, I think it's the leadership recognizing they have to move past from that very dark part of China's history. And it wasn't just a cultural revolution. It's been for the past 150 years because a lot of really bad things happened to China. It's not just China doing it to its own people.
Yeah.
And coming out of it, I think the leadership over there recognizes that there is value in establishing itself through soft power. So rather than being very overt and saying, wow, we're going to do it this way, and then we're going to tell the whole world about it, they just said, okay, we're going to be very advanced technologically. We're going to rebuild our cities. We're going to like show off and let people come to their own conclusions. And I've seen that for myself because I first went to China when I was a teenager, like I was in my early teens, and it was landscape, very nice and pretty, but it was not very nice otherwise. I don't know how to explain it without sounding mean. Um, but then I recently went last year, and it was some of that stuff remained from 20 years ago, but it has advanced so much. I'll give you an example. Like, when one of the days that I was there, I was walking through the old city that they had rebuilt and modernized, right? And then I walked past a TikTok star, and he was filming there, and I took a picture with the TikTok star, and I was like, I didn't even know his name. I just recognized him from TikTok, and 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 he's this again, he's not Chinese. He's this tall, like maybe Caucasian Russian guy, and he's a model. And then I spoke to him in English. I said, can you take a picture of me? And he said, sure. And then he looked at me and he's like, why aren't you speaking to me in Mandarin?
Oh,
Oh, okay. Way to make me feel bad. But yeah, I'm from Singapore. I don't speak very well. But I replied to him in Mandarin. So
so that's interesting though. But do you think it's the younger generation because the numbers are higher, obviously, when the younger generation has a higher generation count or number count. Do you think it's them wanting to embrace the technology? Because you're right, China's a powerhouse that way. And so they
yeah,
embraced it and they've taken off, especially with like influencers. And you see there's a lot of talent coming out of China.
for sure. For sure. I think it's the younger generation, and they're just like, you know what? This is me, this is us. I want to be proud of who I am. I'm gonna do it. And yeah, another example was when I went last year, everything was cashless. I didn't even have to I didn't even have to bring Chinese money with me.
Isn't it interesting when we go and visit these countries, just how advanced they are? Sometimes we're like, why are we over here carrying cash, dirty old dollar bills and coins?
Let me tell you, I still carry cash. People look at, I'm like, I was even before COVID, people were trying to go cashless, and then I'd be one of those people. Oh, I pay cash. We have this platform called Pay Now, and then people will be like, pay now me. I'm like, no, 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 I don't pay now. I pay cash.
I'm the same way. I have cash all the time, and my children are like, oh, so I'll give them, like $40, and they're like, Mom, why don't you just give me my card or load it on my card, my debit card? And I was like, why? I have the cash. They're like, some of these places they don't take cash. There's a lot of places. If you're a newer restaurant, they won't do it. They're totally cashless.
Also, the same thing's happening over there.
Hmm.
I think it's,
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating. I think it's really interesting what's happening.
I think we're just old school, me and you.
Old school trying to not be too old school.
Oh, I know, but we stand out because I'll say something around my son and all his baseball boys, and they just look at me and then they start to cackle. They just laugh and think it's hilarious. And I'm like, no, no. So, do you get inspiration when you go to China? When you went back last year, did it kind of give you more inspiration to continue in that series, the Origin Chronicles?
Um, Not really, because I was already like, full on in my series. I had the story idea. I already knew what I wanted to incorporate. I suppose going there last year was kind of like a confirmation that okay, I'm doing the right
Oh, good.
thing, and people make a thing of it. I mean, the reason why I went back last year was because like I said, I'm a what, one, two, three, third generation, yeah, third or fourth generation, and my family, we went back to my dad's like ancestral town, so he never even grew up there either. He doesn't know anyone there, so it was just more, let's go back to our roots and check it out.
I love that when you go back to where your ancestors were, where it started. I love those history visits. Yes.
Yeah, and people do that. People do that. They go back to wherever the town their grandparents or their great grandparents came from, and then they drag the kids along too. Whether the kids understand is a totally different thing.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. Me and my sister are going back. My parents have now both passed, and so we're doing that in June. So we're both born in Colorado. We're going back to the hospitals, to the towns, and then where was our house. So we got it all mapped out. We're going to do the same thing. But
Aw.
you're right. Not everybody wants to do that. The newer generations, they don't really care so much about that. They're not as nostalgic or sentimental as like we are.
No, I actually think everyone will get there eventually at a certain phase of their life, but younger people just aren't concerned with that at this point in time. It's people like me and you who are straddling. We're straddling either two cultures, two generations, you know, and then we feel it. That's when we want to be able to see where we came from. And when I was 18, I was like, everything was Buffy.
Okay, I love that you love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I just rewatched the whole series probably like 3 weeks ago in January. In
Oh,
January.
that's extreme. You watched the whole series? I couldn't get past season 3.
Okay, but her and Spike.
Yeah, so I never even got to that part. I
Yeah.
got halfway through that not so fantastic season with Ryan.
Oh, I feel
Right?
like it gets better as it goes on. And
Right, but no, I love.
did you watch Charmed? Do you remember when Charmed was around with the three sisters and
Yeah,
Shannon Doherty or Doherty?
I watched, I think I watched the whole Charmed, but only back then. I've not rewatched it, and I loved it so much. Yeah, I remember Buffy and Charmed in Singapore. They were running concurrently with Friends. So goes back to what I said before about all that heavy Western influence.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. That's what I craved. I was like, I just happen to be Chinese outside.
That is hilarious though that they were doing those two because they're not even filmed around the same time, I don't think. Were they?
Uh, Maybe not, but that was my experience. They were airing here concurrently, those three shows. That's what I remember. And I remember late night shows also. They were airing David Letterman, I think at the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was on for like forever. Yeah. Charmed and Buffy love them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So on your Origin Chronicles, what is the next book? Do you have it plotted? Have you started writing it?
Oh, it's with beta readers, and one of them is here. She's reading them. I've nicknamed the book Evolution. Again, I have a science background. I cannot help throwing in science concepts whenever I can, especially since my vampire series takes place in a contemporary setting. When I'm writing a fantasy world, I can't really science. But here I can. And so pretty much every book I've thrown in some kind of scientific element or medical element. And this one is nicknamed Evolution because something is happening on that level. Um, but my beta reader, Seer, is that how you pronounce your name? Seer? And, she has nicknamed the book Vampire Plague. which I think sounds more ominous and better. So I'm gonna start marketing, but I'm gonna start marketing the book both ways: evolution when I feel like it, and then vampire plague when I feel like it.
Yeah, she's like, that's not what I call it.
Yeah.
Here.
Kier, yes,
Here. Is that right?
yes,
Okay.
I think it. And yes, if I remember right, that's also a pen name. So we're all using pen names here.
Okay, so it's with your beta. Then do you get that back and then work on rewriting or edits? Or by then, are you pretty much locked into the story and it's just maybe cleaning up a couple things?
So it really depends. I can tell you this book, after my three betas went through it, didn't have much that I needed to do. All right,
Nice.
so it's pretty straightforward. This one, I had to go to therapy with my main character because all three of my betas said we didn't have her voice, it's not good enough. Please add some perspective from her, please add some chapters from her perspective. And, you know, I struggled with that. And because I had timeline, I had to rush through it. So that was fun.
Well, you
So
said that last time, like you're having a hard time getting in her head.
yeah, I was, because I had not really gotten into her head in a very, very long time, and I thought that I didn't feel like it. I didn't want to.
She's dark,
But
correct? She's dark.
yeah, she's been through some dark times, and then my beta readers felt it was important to understand her motivations and her actions, because otherwise it was just all very disconnected. It was being seen from the perspective of other characters.
Mhm.
So I had to kind of dive back into her head, and thankfully I did it while on holiday, so it kind of balanced how I was feeling.
Okay, so is she going to be in the third book? Because isn't it the same characters all the way through?
Yeah, so the nice thing is now that I've gotten her talking, she's in book three, she's in book four, and she's gonna be in my Chinese New Year novella.
Ah,
Yeah,
she's
she's
she's a stubborn one. Oh, okay. Do share. How is she a stubborn one?
she's 2,000 years old. She kind of does things her own way, right? And she's not the very touchy-feely sort of person. So so it kind of takes a while to get her to be aware of what she's feeling, what she wants, what she doesn't want. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. You're like, well, she's 2,000 years old. That's why. Like, that's such an explanation. I mean, it's perfect because she's a vampire, but we just don't hear that ever.
Well, I mean, it's true. So she's kind of like, yeah, I just do things my own way. You can't get me to change my mind, or I could change my mind, but maybe I won't admit it until later.
Yeah, yeah. She's proud.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is done. It's with the betas, and then depending on their feedback, you don't necessarily know what's in store for you. It could be like a mid-flight, or it could be like your second one. Lots of
Yeah.
rewriting.
So the good thing is I think you know by now, I'm someone who when I'm at work, I really have a lot of pressure and timelines. And so for my writing and publishing, I prefer not to do that to myself. So what I've done this year is I've told myself if I publish one book this year, that would be nice, but I'm not going to hold myself to it because actually I've got two manuscripts being beta read, the third book and the first book of a um, epic fantasy series. And because I've set how to say, pretty broad timelines for my betas, I'm setting a broad timeline for myself so that I can focus on things like online events, more exposure, um, and writing rather than publishing. Because they're all different things, isn't it? And they take up different headspace. And trying to do everything in one shot is difficult. You know as well as I do.
It is. And some days we just don't have the energy. So, like if you have to do rewrites, it requires a certain energy that you need to have to be creative. And you've talked about the creative brain on your social media, which is so cute. And then other times, lower energy, like editing. We can all edit. You can go in and look for your grammar mistakes, and that's a little bit lower energy. So I think that contributes to it too. Not only is it like what the task at hand that you have to do, and as an author, we have a million of them, but it's also like your energy level. And like you said, you have a really important job already with a lot of people depending on you. And then, you're a wife and a mama. So it is
Mm-hmm.
hard.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of, yeah, but going back to your question about, what's the process going to be like? I'm just not going to hold myself to it. I have my beta readers have their timeline.
Mhm.
Uh, if there's a lot of feedback, if there's a lot of work, okay, fine. If there isn't, okay, fine.
Nice. But you're like, fingers crossed, I got it right the first time. There's not a whole lot left.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, it's always fingers crossed, right? It's always fingers crossed that, please, I think I got it. Don't surprise me.
But where did you find time then to write the first book in your epic fantasy, your new series? And can you share what that series is called or not yet?
Sorry, what?
Can you share what that series will be called or not yet?
Okay, I can share, but I haven't really shared it on my social media. I was gonna tease, but this
That's okay.
series is
We don't
called.
have to. You don't have to spoil it here.
Okay. But I can spoil this because I've already told my group of ARC readers and I've already shared it on my newsletter. Oh, it's that time of the month to write my newsletter. Oh my goodness. um, right, there's newsletters too. So my epic fantasy series is a follow-up to my original, like you recognize this one, right?
Love that.
So it's going to be a follow-up to that original series, but it's also gonna cross over with my vampire series.
Ooh, I love crossovers. Readers do too.
Yeah, yeah. It's not gonna cross over so soon because the crossover is more like the vampire series crosses over into the epic stuff, not the other way around.
Okay.
Um, but I've already told my ARC readers and my newsletter, I think I told my newsletter, that in book 2, there are Easter eggs already.
Oh, I mean, everybody loves Easter eggs. Like Taylor Swift created them, I feel like, and we all just use them now.
Yeah, so I've been planning everything, conceptualizing everything for quite a while. And even while I was revising this, even when I was in therapy with my character, I was already okay, I'm gonna put this in. And I'm now that 2 of my manuscripts are my betas, whatever I'm writing now is just my epic fantasy stuff. And that one, it's funny because I'm reading this for reference. I'm reading this for reference. And I put a reel about that the other day about how I'm using my own books like
Yeah.
textbooks because I can't remember exactly what I wrote. Yeah.
Well, you have to because your readers, they will know. Like, even though we're the author and we wrote it, you're like, that all fell out of my head because I have all these other ideas or I have the other, like the universe planning of the crossover. So we don't always remember what we wrote, but your readers sure do. Yeeks.
Even if they don't, and if one day in the future I decide to reread all my own books, I will be mad at myself if I got something wrong. I'll be like, oh,
I love that. That is so true, though. Especially like
right.
you find a typo or like something that doesn't make sense. You're like, how did this even get to publishing?
Oh, these typos are awful. Like how many times I've been through the manuscript, I've had different pairs of eyes on them, and then I get my author copies, I flip the first time, and there's like 2 periods.
Yes,
I'm like, what?
I know. I have like, I pay for editors. There's also, like you said, your beta team, your ARC team. I have alpha readers and it gets by all of us. I'm like, how does it all get by all of us? They say that the brain auto corrects and just moves on when you're reading for pleasure. Like your brain just recognizes the mistake and just keeps on moving on. I was like, well, I
They
don't like that.
are tenacious.
So, on the crossover, which I love, do you have to then have the third book released before you can release the first in the series for the epic romance
Okay,
or the epic
so what I
fantasy?
technically my entire vampire series could be released before going into that. epic one, but I want my epic one to start having some of the spotlight. So I'm hoping that comes first. My vampire readers might not be happy by that about that.
Having to wait.
Yeah, about having to wait. But like I said, realistically, I'm also giving myself a bit of space this year. So let's just see how it goes. I mean, if book three, Vampire Plague comes out first, I'm yeah, okay, it's not gonna quite go my way, but it's not gonna like break break the whole steps, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How many books are planned in the epic series then?
I'm gonna try and keep it to no more than six.
6. Okay, does that include All That Glitters Is Gold or
No,
no?
no, 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 no.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, I know. I am such a fantasy writer. I cannot. It just keeps going and going and going. And the sad thing is sometimes I'm writing and my fantasy books are not quite the same as the romance books you write. You could technically there's what do you call them? Interconnected standalones, right?
Right.
But while you can do that in fantasies, oftentimes you can't. It's more like okay, these six books are one story, right? So that's what I'm going for. And but sometimes two things go through my mind when I'm writing the series, which is that why did I do this to myself?
Okay.
And the
Oh,
second
that's so
thing is,
realistic.
the second thing is anyone gonna actually hit book five and book six? So it makes me a little sad when I think about it. So, but you know what? I can't stop, and I'm enjoying the process, and I'm just gonna keep going.
Well, I mean, that's all that matters, right? You enjoy it. There are readers that will read book 5 and 6. They'll want more. You know, you have your, yes, you have your super fans, which is beautiful.
I I I know that, but sometimes I mean, the reality is that the first of a series is where there are most readers, right? And it kind of funnels
Yeah,
down,
that's true.
right? So
Very,
then when you hit later books in the series, then that's when the anxiety starts setting in.
well, and also plotting out a series, it can be overwhelming. It's pretty daunting. And when
Yeah.
fantasy has magic systems or it has their own world and maps, and I mean that makes it even more complicated.
You have to come up with cultures, or you have to pull cultures from what you know and kind of make up your own from that. Yeah, so that's the fun part. That's also the tiring part. So my series, I'm planning not more than six books. What happened was after I finished drafting book three or four, which was I was like a bullet train, I think, in 2021 and 2022. I wasn't so heavy into social media, so I was like just happily writing. So that's when I could draft all of this out.
Yeah.
But then this particular series, by book three or four, I started losing steam. So I stopped planning and I stopped writing further. So I really don't I'm excited because now I'm gonna start heading into book five and six, where the crossover actually starts happening. And I spent I spent a month on a writing break
Mhm.
in the second half of December until the middle of January. I didn't write. I was reading a lot, which was fantastic. Um, but I was also thinking, I was also creating. So I was like writing down notes, like, okay, this is what has to happen. So I'm really excited to get that started. If you had asked me back in 2021, 2022, I'll be like, oh, I'm tired. I don't know what happens next.
That I marvel then. You've had that in your head for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So how did you write these other books before this one that's been marinating so long?
Yeah, okay. So those other books were written, um, Sundered, my first book, the one with the white cover, that was first drafted when my first kid was a very small baby. I think that was long, long ago. And then I never finished it. Then when COVID began, or a little before COVID began, that same first kid started writing on her own. She started writing fan fiction. I told her, "Oh, that's so strange. You know, mommy used to write, and I stopped writing." And she looked at me and said, "You should just go back to writing." Um, I pulled out my old draft of Sunder and I started telling her the story.
Mhm.
Her siblings were around at the time and they were really small. And I started telling them the story. And then when I hit the part that I stopped, they were like, "That what happened?" I said, "I don't know."
The end.
The end. And they're like, "No, no, no, we want to know what happens next." So for their sake, I continued the story.
Mhm.
That was like early in the days of COVID, you know, and you know, a lot of us we turned to writing during that time because it was so difficult, and that was me. I churned out 3 stories in that time.
Well, and I think y'all had one of the more strict lockdowns, correct?
We I don't think it was more strict than anywhere else. I think China had it the strictest. The US had strict ones, but people just didn't follow them,
Yeah,
right?
we were only locked down for 2 months.
You guys had strict rules. It's just whether people followed the rules.
Yeah.
We were locked down. We were locked down 2 months too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it
Okay.
was also 2 months. Yeah. So it wasn't that long, but in that 2 months, I drafted a lot and I had fun.
Oh, wow. I know that when I talked to Sienna in Australia, they had a
Oh
extreme lockdown, and so did New Zealand. So I didn't know because you're kind of on that side of the globe if it was severe for you guys as well.
yeah. I mean, it was severe for everyone. I mean, I'm I think I'm fortunate in that I was one of the 15% of people who were allowed to move about simply because of my job.
Mm, of
And
course.
I remember those days, there was no traffic. I didn't have to fight with anyone for parking.
You're like, this is kind of nice.
There was hardly any foot traffic. Um, okay, I couldn't get food very easily, but you know,
Of course, yeah, there was a shortage.
yeah. And in fact, the foot traffic was heaviest at that evening, sweet spot when it was the only time of the day when people felt like leaving the house to exercise. Because, in Singapore, the day is so hot. So people work out either early in the morning or
Mhm.
later in the evening, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that I go to work, that when I want to go out and exercise, I'm fighting with like tons of people who've been cooped up at
Yeah,
home.
everybody else who wants to exercise too. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, those were fun days. Let's not do it again.
No, 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 no. When you go back though to what you've plotted, 3 and 4 years ago, and you reread it, do you nail it then, or do you have to do a lot of reworking? Have you changed the ideas? Change? You're like, oh, I don't know about this anymore.
Oh, for sure they change. They never stay the same. I mean, I would say that if you can't change your outline or your plot, then the story is not going to be as good as it can be.
Hmm.
And I- when I don't even know what I was outlining back then. All I know is what I outlined recently during my writing break. And
Oh, okay.
that even that outline could change. Like I remember I was looking through it, like I wrote a paragraph like this happens this
Mhm.
way. And then as I was actually revising the draft, the story went slightly differently. And then the entire paragraph of outline just had to be thrown out.
See, but I think that's the magic, right?
Yeah.
Like when we start getting into the story and the characters start taking on a life of their own, that's what I think is amazing about being an author.
And as a when I was earlier on a few years ago, I didn't sense this as much as I do now. And I love the fact that I know my characters well enough that I know how they would respond, how they would talk. It's not easy switching heads, but when you kind of get the hang of it, you get into their voice and you discover things. Like the other day, I have this character who has been in my series since Sunder, right? And
Mhm.
I thought I knew him very well. Like he's a nice chap, but he's got problems, so he's a little bit red flaggish. Um, and then I found out the other day he can't swim.
Really?
Such a mundane, silly fact. But I had a whole conversation about it because they're in the middle of something pretty important where he ought to be able to swim.
Hmm.
And his betrothed, the girl, the girl he's engaged to, is like, why do I not know that you can't swim until now? We're on the ship.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
But don't you just, isn't that just amazing how that just comes out?
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. As an author, these are one of the things that we live for. I mean, there are reader moments and then there are writing moments, and this is one of them.
I love that. That is the best way to put it, the writer moments. Because, yeah, we don't always know. We think we do.
Mhm.
And then your character does something, you're like, oh my gosh, let's just go with it and see how it works out.
I'm sure you've experienced it. The words just appeared when you were typing them, and then you pause and you're like, wait, I didn't know that.
Yep. I just had it today. Um, and it was, and yeah, yeah, that's the spontaneity. You're like, where does this even come from? And sometimes when you go back and reread, because I've tried to be more of a plotter now, so I can at least get a sense, an idea of where the story is going. I always have the ending in mind, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. But that's what I love is just like when they take over the script for you, and then when you reread your own book, you're like, wow, where did this even come from? I can't believe I came up with this.
I know. I love those moments too. They are few and far between.
Yeah.
Most times I'm just can we do that again?
So you
But
have,
sorry, let me add to that. I watched a very short video clip by Brandon Sanderson the other day, and
ooh,
he's a big fantasy
he's
author.
amazing.
I don't dare to start his books because I know I will rabbit hole through his books, right?
And
I don't dare, but I know
they're
he teaches,
thick.
yeah, and I know he teaches writing, and he was talking about what makes a good book or what makes a good writer, and it's pretty much this, not the spontaneity, but the ability to say, okay, this doesn't work. I'm going to scratch the whole thing and start over. And you asked that question about the outlines. That's pretty much it. Like you have an initial outline, but being willing to say, okay, it's not working. My characters dictated something different. I'm going to go from there.
He is phenomenal. Like I try and watch his YouTube channel when I can. It would be amazing to be able to audit one of his classes and just sit there because his Kickstarter, I mean, he raises a ton of money. He raises more than his Kickstarter. He then donates the extra to fulfill other people's Kickstarters. I mean, he's an amazing author, human, everything. So yeah,
Mm.
whenever I come across him, you always want to lean into his conversation because like I just feel like he knows exactly what to do.
Yeah,
He's
yeah, I
such a
think
good role model for all of us.
yes.
Has anything gotten easier now that you've been an author, you've published many times, you said you're trying to build, your social media, which you have a lot of followers on there. What has
Well,
gotten easier?
what has gotten easier? I don't know. I want to say definitely not the marketing, definitely not the social media. Um, not the publishing process. I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I can't predict that it will go as smooth as I want it to, right? Um, Even the writing, I would say I'm a different writer. My voice has changed. Um, I I kind of know what my voice sounds like, but I wouldn't say it's easier as again because of the unpredictability of this whole thing. So I think maybe what has gotten easier is allowing myself to um, give voice to what's going on in me. um, I don't know if you know what I mean. So in my work, I get a lot of emotional loading and I need to unload it. And so the writing serves that function pretty well.
Hmm.
I use it to kind of offload. And so what
Cathartic.
has become easy, yeah, what has become easier, I suppose, is that process so that I can actually function at work. Yeah.
That's a beautiful outlet, though, if you think about it, because you do have a very important job and you are very important to many, many of your patients. And so I always wonder where that all goes when you're a doctor. I mean, they're humans, right? And so, what a beautiful way to channel all that energy into your own works.
Yeah, so I mean my own friends, my colleagues, I mean they do sports, they travel. I mean for me I'm not a very sporty person, so the writing is it. I mean like I can carry my anger about something and then write it in the scene.
But that's so perfect because there's a authenticity in your writing, and that's what pulls readers in because it makes your characters relatable because they are based on real feelings that you've infused into them.
Well, I hope so. I mean, the ironic thing is I'm writing about vampires that technically they shouldn't be relatable, and yet somehow I need to make them relatable. Yeah, so that's one of the tough parts too. Like how do you make a character you're supposed to side with, and yet there's no way you can actually relate with them? Like my 2,000-year-old stubborn vampire.
I know I have two characters that readers love or hate, and there is no in between. But it's kind of fun to write them because they are so just like in your face or they're just so over the top, but they're not unworthy of love. It just takes like a special person to love big personalities or difficult personalities or stubborn personalities, right? But that's what I always like to show is that people aren't unlovable. They're not unworthy.
Nor are they entirely villainous? Although my epic fantasy has a true villain, but generally speaking, nor is anyone entirely villainous. Most people are pretty gray. It's just different shades of gray, right? So if you read my vampire series, all my characters have done things that are a bit questionable. I mean, not outright wrong, but questionable. Um, and yet at the same time, you can't help. The what I've done is I've written it in such a way that you can't help but kind of side with them. Like, oh, okay, I get where they were coming from. I get why they did it that way.
Oh, I
You
love
know,
love
especially.
them. I love reading them. I love writing them. When their back is against the wall, it's a normal person that backs up against the wall. What are you going to do?
Yeah. So this book, the villain, um, shows himself more
Mhm.
and tells his backstory, and it's where I also did a post about this where I had readers, they gave me feedback about how they felt he was very well written because they know he's the villain, and yet at the same time when you hear the backstory you're like, oh, okay. I mean,
That's
you still want him to get his just desserts,
yeah, yep.
but maybe not prolong it.
Well, I think that's why so many people watch true crime. You know, true crime with women is really, really popular. And it's because people want to know the why behind why they did it. You know, it can be a heinous crime, but when they go and explain all the why behind it, people are like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Oh, all right. I'm not a true crime fan. Feels too dark.
I'm not
You're like,
I don't watch it, but I know when I go on TikTok, there's like, I always seem to get on these ladies that are like, they're watching true crime and their husbands or their spouses are always like, what is she doing? And like, she knows the perfect murder. And she's like, yeah.
oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I've heard true crime is really popular. I can't imagine why. Now, I think that's a good
Apparently
explanation
it's
why that.
really popular with women. Not at all what you would think. You would think it'd be like men watching, but it's like, no, women. And so, you know, TikTok always has parodies about, I know how to get away with a perfect crime because I watch true crime
So
videos.
women are reading romance. Women are watching true crime. What are the men using for entertainment?
I think sports. I think that's it.
Poor guys.
Yeah. Wow. So you have six books coming up in the epic, and then you have this last one in the vampire.
No, no, not last one. 3, 4, and 4.5. The novella.
Oh my gosh.
It's gonna be a few years. I'm in no hurry.
But do you like that? Does it give you comfort and kind of like a peace of mind to know, to have a roadmap of where you're going?
Yes, yes. I think the vast majority of us, no matter whether you're a plotter or pantser, thrive on a certain level of
Hmm.
certainty, just to know where you're headed. just to have a purpose or a goal. And knowing this gives me some level of comfort. It also gives me some level of anxiety because it's like
Hmm.
I have a lot left to write.
Oh, so it's daunting the totality of what you want to eventually write and publish.
Yeah, it can feel that way. The good thing is most times I don't feel daunted. Most times it's more like, okay, let's just go.
Yeah.
Which is, I think again, it goes back to me not setting timelines for myself. I think that is what really helps not feel daunted. Because I can well imagine if I were to say, okay, I'm going to publish one book a year, I must do it,
Yeah.
then I'm just going to freeze.
Well, I love that you're giving yourself grace. I think that we don't do that too often, or as often as we should. People were, it's this whole like hustle culture, and you should work your 9 to 5 and then come home and work 5 to 9. And so it's nice when you give yourself the grace and the mercy to set your own timelines because then you enjoy it more. And then I think the product itself, the books itself, become a richer experience for everybody, yourself writing it and the readers reading it.
I think so too. And then another aspect is the social media also. So I usually plan 3 or 4 posts a week, but then there are some days where, the kids are not having a good day, it's just too chaotic. And then funnily enough, usually I have to consciously give myself permission to not post and not engage that day, because there is this FOMO sense, right? I mean, like, oh, everyone's done their post for the day already, and I'm still like my kids are yelling at me, you know. And yeah, you just have to be able to do that and say that, okay, today's just not working.
Oh, yeah. Social media can be its own full-time job, no doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, it has been a very fast hour chatting with you. And as always, I love it. I know. It's like, where does the time go? If we were close, we'd be best friends.
Yeah. I would drink coffee all the time with you.
Oh, yeah, to pick our brain. We should just do this in general, just normally. Check in
Yeah,
with each
yeah.
other. Okay, I like that.
Do you have time for that? You wanted to do something the last time, but we got cut off. That rapid fire answering thing, or are we not doing that today?
Oh, we don't have to do that today, but I do want you to tell everyone where they can find you and where they can buy your books.
Okay. So people can find me on Instagram mostly. I am at Linda Ling Writes. I am occasionally on Threads. I'm slowly losing steam for that. I'm also on TikTok, but never mind. Never mind that one. People can find me on Goodreads as well, and my books are all on Amazon and KU. I have no energy for any other distributor.
Oh, but that's good. I mean, KU readers are very loyal.
I should hope so. And then the other thing is I have 2 upcoming online events where, a bunch of fantasy authors got together. One is Stuff Your Kindle Fantasy, which is next Friday.
Oh, the
My book's
28th.
gonna be, yeah, my book's gonna be there. And then 2 weeks or a week and a half later, the weekend of 7th of March, my my fantasy books will be in Stuff Your Kindle Fantasy. My vampire books will be in that second event called the Indie Author Spring Spectacular. So I'm looking forward to both events, and that's what you'll be seeing me posting for the next 2 weeks.
Yay! So we can pick your books next week and the week after.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect. And she's at Linda Ling Writes.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being on here, and I wish you a very good weekend because you're already on your Friday and my Thursday night.
That's right. Yeah. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to
You
me.
know,
It's
I love
always
it. We'll do this again,
lovely.
probably in the fall. Check in with you, see where you're at.
Yay. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you. Good
Linda.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.